Good morning, everyone. I see we've got a decent amount of people in the meeting this morning, so I just want to go ahead and get a start. So this way we make sure we allow enough time for the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the webinar for migration strategy to VMware Sphere to VMware Cloud Foundation. We're glad you joined us, and we hope to help you explore on how to make this transition more smoothly. I'm Katrina Phillips. I will be your facilitator for today. I'm a little ripe to virtual tech gurus. I've celebrated my 1-month anniversary yesterday. I came to the space from Microsoft, where I was a technical specialist for endpoint management, deployment, and security, as well as migration from on-prem to cloud with workloads. You're in for a treat today. Vipin Nair is also joining us, and he will be your presenter. He is very thoroughly versed in IT. He has 24 years of experience in the industry. He has certifications within VMware, on vSphere, NSX, vSAN, VCF, and VMC on AWS. He specializes in cloud infrastructure on virtualization and plans to give you actionable insights on how to facilitate a seamless migration within your own experience. I'll be going off camera for now through the slides, but I want to give you a heads up. There's going to be a couple polls throughout the session. So just to make sure everybody's blood's pumping and that we have a pulse, we're going to start with the first poll. And Fred, you can launch that one now if you don't mind. And I'll allow just a minute or so for you guys to answer, and then I'll go ahead and jump into the agenda. Okay, that one is in the chat now. If you don't mind popping in some answers here, once I see some votes, we'll go ahead and proceed. I need to have whoever's ready to run a marathon. I need what you had for breakfast. Okay, thanks for answering. I'm seeing some good responses. Glad to know you're awake. Okay, so let me jump into the agenda if we want to hop to that next slide. So really, this is just to set the stage on what our intent is for today. We're going to start with foundational technologies such as vSphere, NSX, and vSAN. We want to understand their roles in modernizing your IT infrastructure. And then following this, we'll get into the benefits of migration from VMware to vSphere to VMware Cloud Foundation. We want to outline the step-by-step migration process, as well as provide insights and best practices on that successful transformation. And also, we want to put these polls out so we can understand really our audience a little bit better and why you're here. Some of you are customers, some of you are new to our space and don't know anything about virtual tech gurus. So we're going to pop in a quick poll really to understand like why you're here, what you need to benefit from within this session. This way, if we don't cover it today, that we do get some information and follow up with you accordingly. That would be most helpful. So I'm going to go off camera here for about 2 minutes. We'll pop that poll into the chat. If you could just kind of take a few minutes, it's about 4 questions, and then we'll go ahead with the intro. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like we have that one launched for the poll. Maybe there's 3 questions there. If you have something outside of maybe the 3 responses, if you could give us just a little bit more detail, and if you want to pop it into the chat or you want to put it in the poll itself, we're open to that, mainly just so that we can kind of give you a better response or better information throughout this session. I appreciate it. We should have given some Jeopardy music or maybe some elevator music in between. Okay, I'm probably going to allow maybe another 2 more minutes just to make sure everybody gets a chance to kind of respond. This is most helpful for us. Okay, I think we're just about ready to continue on. So if you want to pull over to the introduction, we'll keep going. Okay, so basically, just again, kind of reset the stage here. We all know that everybody's kind of modernizing their infrastructure and embracing cloud technologies. And as that happens, we want to make sure that your migration journey is smooth and it becomes very important for you. So if you're already familiar with these platforms, or if you're just starting to look at them, we really want to break down the process first and foremost in straightforward terms for you. And we'll discuss different ways that you can best lift and shift your infrastructure, tackle any hurdles you might encounter, and also give you a plan for success in your process moving forward. And if you're a seasoned IT professional exploring cloud migration for the first time, we want to give you valuable insights to guide you through this transformative process. Now, at the end, we're also going to come back with a final poll. This is really designed to figure out like where you are in your process and at what level did you gain knowledge, or do you still need assistance? So be on the lookout for that at the end. We're going to have somebody sit in the room and answer questions and provide answers. Also, if you have something along the way, feel free to pop it into chat. And we'll get you answers as best we can during the session. And we're going to leave this channel open in case you want to come back and gain information from either participants or from us. So appreciate your time today, and I am going to now hand it over to Vipin for his overview. Thanks, Vipin.
Thank you, Katrina, and it was a great introduction and setting the context very well. Since the interest of time, I really want to jump onto the content now. So just to give you a little bit of overview of vSphere first to begin with, and then we will take the journey towards the migration aspect to the end as we flow through this slide deck today, right? So let's understand what is vSphere. So vSphere is nothing but VMware virtualization platform, kind of transforming your data center into virtualized environment that includes traditional. If you can think of, you have a traditional physical servers, right? So that kind of abstracting all those physical layers and get into more of virtualized platform, which includes nothing but your CPU storage and all the networking resources, right? Moving on to understanding what we were before and what we are talking about from a virtualization perspective, right? And if you look at traditionally many years back, right? So we have a physical server where you have all the software operates, that includes various applications, your operating systems, and it becomes really complex data center structures, right? And kind of leading into many of the inefficiencies in managing all these infrastructure together. Guess what? Now we have virtualization platform available, which kind of mitigate all your underutilized computers and kind of reducing the cost, which is mostly the case in the earlier days. And thereby a lot of sustainability factor comes into play when it comes to reducing the power and the cooling what we need to give to the data center, right? And virtualization pretty much address all these, consolidating into kind of workloads domain when we come into VCF portion of the world, and reducing the number of servers which is kind of running in your data center, right? That's pretty much what we were seeing from a physical to virtualization world today. Just to summarize, it's kind of optimizing your utilization, kind of gives you the flexibility and more of operational efficiency running your data center, right? So now, since you already know now, VMware uses vSphere as a foundation, right? But the main component what we are talking about is server, right? In a world of virtualization, we call it VM, or virtualization machine or virtual machine, right? It's kind of an abstraction, as I said before, kind of emulates of a computer system what you have and gives you all that flexibility and all that muscles what you need to perform like a physical server, right? You have best of the quality internet, you have CPUs, your operating system working efficiently. Sometimes if you talk about beyond VMware, it can be even platform independent, right? So you can have virtual machine running in. We have various providers what is available in the market, but it can be really doesn't matter that what kind of a platform running behind. You can run a virtual machine smoothly over physical machines what you have, right? And then going a little deeper into vSphere, right? And if you see on the screen, right, there are two components when it comes to vSphere, right? The vSphere itself, that's a foundation or a platform, and also the vCenter component. So as I said before, vSphere is a virtualization platform, kind of gives you the management, resource optimization, make sure that you have all the application available for you, and kind of brings in automation pieces into it, right? It kind of aggregates everything what you have in your data center, puts together in a consolidated manner for you to operate it. Now, when it comes to vCenter, it's kind of a central administration point where all your ESXi host, which is the physical servers what you have, and you kind of manage all the virtual machines running on these ESXi hosts, right? And then this, when I talk about vCenter, it runs on a Linux-based appliance. Now talking about kind of virtualization, right? Virtualization doesn't stop at a server level, right? If you slice and dice it, right? You could see that virtualization is a process of creating software-based representation of a physical unit that includes your server, you call it desktop, that includes your network and all your storage devices, what you have. And this is the most efficient and effective way to reduce your IT expenses, what you have all across your data center in various physical servers, right? Now, as I said, VMware provides all these capabilities the server virtualization, network virtualization, storage, and desktop virtualization, right? Now, how do we put all these things together? That's the beauty, right? There it comes to software-defined data center. Combining all these things, what we discussed together, it kind of create a virtualized control of your data center in a very much automated fashion. What do you have? And vSphere becomes the foundation for your software-defined data center. You know, you could do service management with that, right? More of catalog-driven kind of operations. You have a cloud management layer, right? This can be more of orchestration between you have across the devices what you have, your workflow automation, and you can think of a self-service portal for your user community, right? And it has, of course, we cannot forget the fact that that's underneath physical layer, and then of course kind of gives you a software-defined data center from a VMware perspective, all together with the network and security features through NSX, microsegmentation, and with Carbon Black, right? So that you can reduce or manage your business risk effectively. Yeah. Now, the topic for today, right? The VMware Cloud Foundation. So let's understand what is it, VMware Cloud Foundation, right? We call it as a platform, right? It's a multi-cloud platform or a full stack hyper-converged infrastructure, kind of bringing you the modernized data center, and becomes more easier for you to deploy your virtual machines or maybe a containerized applications, right? And we'll go deeper a little bit more about it as we go along with this presentation today. You heard about vSphere, which is the compute portion of it. Then comes the vSAN, which is the storage portion of it, NSX, networking, and operational aspect of it, which is nothing but the ARIA suite of products what VMware offers, right? So what is the idea for having this VCF, right? It's more of a standardized, automated, validated approach, kind of simplifies your management, and you really get a true sense of software-defined infrastructure resources, right? All right, so I will not go a little bit more, I would not go about lifecycle management because there are a lot of aspects about how do we run this lifecycle management. How do you enable hybrid cloud with the vSphere, VMware Cloud Foundation? Probably as we understand more, then I will walk through some of the aspects of how do we achieve hybrid cloud platform with VMware Cloud Foundation. Now, this is what the bill of material. So when you really look at VCF as a product, right? This is what you get it as a package, right? So that includes your VMware validated design. So because most of the time what we see customers face, how do we get into a VCF platform, right? Because it's so complex, because it has got many of the components, right? So VMware helps you to get some sort of something called VMware validated design, which is a proven solution or design which is available for you to kind of deploy. So it's more of a turnkey solution for you. So you can follow that deployment cycles, and then you get your VCF environment ready, right? And this is for both traditional VMs and containerized application, both you can run on that. Yeah. And the beauty of VCF, right? Because you can run this on a multi-cloud environment, be it VMware Cloud on AWS, IBM, or Rackspace, Azure, you name it. You have multiple ways. So what is the advantage of having VMware Cloud when you have an on-premises as well as you have on the hyperscalers, right? You get a seamless experience. The person who is trained to do VCF management or administration, be it vSphere, vSAN, or NSX, it's a similar experience across various hyperscalers, which is available there. So customer or the user does not feel the difficulty of learning various platform which is available, because what they see, even though it's running on AWS platform, what they see in on-premises as well as their cloud looks the same, right? So transition, your training, enablement, management becomes pretty much easier for you to run when you have this VMware solution across the board. Yeah. Now, what happens when we talked about VCF? And I'll just a little bit touch based on the bring up process. What really happens after the bring up process, right? It's a deployment kind of service, right? Using VMware Cloud Builder appliance. You kind of configure everything by step process, right? It uses a configuration. So there is something called a deployment parameter file, which is an Excel-based file. You kind of key in all the information what you needed, and then put together all of these, and then creates this management cluster first, which includes 4 ESXi hosts and supported with vSAN and pre-imaged ESXi build specified in the software BOM what we have seen before, right, in the previous slide. So what happens? What are the what happens when you deploy using VMware Cloud Builder? Some of the key tasks it does, right, as part of the bring up process, it deploys and configures your vCenter server, which is your administration place, and creates a vSAN cluster using the additional 3 hosts for your storage piece of it. And then it requires you to have the configuration to be done at a networking level. So it configures your host networking and cluster features into it. And then it configures your NSX manager. Then after that, host networking, the interconnectivity of these things, and also the transport zones and all your virtual tunnel endpoints, right? And if you have a vSphere DRS rules enabled, that's where it also configures your disaster recovery, all sort of solutions, right? Then let's understand a little bit about the vSAN, right? Many of you might be familiar with vSphere because that's a very common product, which I would say 99% of the customers you will find in the data center, but not necessarily that all the solutions of the VMware will be there. So, but one of the important factor when you are deploying a VCF is the element of vSAN, right? So let's understand a little bit more about vSAN. It's kind of an aggregation of your local storage devices on the ESXi host. As I mentioned that you have number of hosts forming up this management cluster, right? Or we'll talk about workload domain and all sort of things later. But then think about in a way that all these has got a lot of hosts and kind of an aggregate all these host storage devices together and forms your vSAN cluster, right? So it's kind of an integration within the ESXi hypervisor level. Management you can do with vSphere client what you have. You can define your policy-based storage configuration. You can define your stretch clusters, you name it, right? All flash and hybrid configurations. You can achieve your deduplication and compression. From a security point of view, you can have data at rest, encryption, or your native health services you can do from a monitoring perspective, right? And then a little bit about NSX side, if I talk about, right? These are all specialized training program which is available, which is a 5-day course. I cannot really do that in probably like 5 minutes or 3 minutes something. But just to give you perspective about what goes into the VCF as an environment, it's very important. So that if you want to have a deeper understanding about all these things, there are tons of training material available in VMware and outside VMware when it comes to YouTube and other things. You can refer all those things to go deeper into NSX. But my point of giving this just 2 or 3 minutes just about it, you understand what goes into the VMware as an ingredient, right? So what does NSX do, right? NSX gives you the consistent networking and security service across your multiple endpoints, what you have. These workloads, what we are talking about can run on-premises, data center, or a public cloud. And then, NSX gives you that interoperability between these, a lot of security features, right? It also supports a modern application through integration with vSphere, with Tanzu, and your containerization, right? Application modernization, to be honest. Now we heard about vSphere, we heard about vSAN, NSX, right? The ultimate goal or the purpose of this webinar is also how do I get my vSphere environment into VCF environment, right? There comes the migration piece comes in, right? So what does it migration mean, right? Workload migration is nothing but you kind of moving a workload. Workload is nothing but a server, right? Or a program for that matter, right? So you may have an application based or containerized application, right? Or a service for that matter. From one infrastructure to another. That's nothing but in a very simple English, it's migration, right? Or it could be from an on-premises data center to a public cloud, or maybe from one cloud provider to another, from AWS to Azure, or either ways. Or sometimes what happens is that a lot of reverse journey also happens, right? So you have servers running on a public cloud environment, you need to get back into on-premise infrastructure. So It's just not one way, it's bi-directional, right? So what could be the reason, because organization want to modernize. One of the factor these days, if you look at it, digital transformation, modernization, you hear all these terms in today's world, right? So one of the reason for migration is that kind of a lot of application would be legacy application. They want to modernize it, or maybe they want to do tech refresh. They want to upgrade their hardware environment, hardware what they have for various reasons, right? So and then kind of you have a future desired state where you want to have, because at the beginning of the organization they have multiple data center across the world. There's no consolidation as such, right? So it could be a consolidation reason as well. So when you know that, how you want to put your servers together and data center together, and you think about consolidation, right? So or if you want to have a microservice based applications running, you might be having monolithic application currently running and you want to have a more of microservice architecture, right? So you need to modernize it. Along that, probably you may have a better hardware environment to run, or you want to run with your environment to be more DevOps driven right now. So you want to run it across multi-cloud. Maybe if you want to have a burst, maybe a seasonal way of you may have something which is going on at a particular season, and you don't need to have all these servers running at one point of time. It's kind of cost, right? So you really want to have those kind of things go into the public cloud when there is a need. Of course, workload migration comes in, right? Yeah, so and that's pretty much the reasons for workload migration when we say about it. But do you think that's going to be easy? Right? There are a lot of difficulties around it. Right? It's not easy like you pick up one server and move into a cloud just like that, right? Without proper planning analysis, you will not be able to do it. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges, what kind of complexity associated with it, right? Probably it is not the way what initially we thought from a time-consuming perspective to move this workload, right? Now, what are the common challenges, right? So if you see on the screen, I will not go deeper into all of this because this, phrases itself gives you the idea about, different reasons for it. The complexity is one of the main reasons, because you may have a lot of CMDB, your data, you have a lot of information available, but it's so complex. Organization grew to an extent where massively they cannot handle everything, right? They really need professionals to do this migrations, right? The local IT team may not be able to do that, right? So there comes the complexity around legacy infrastructure, their dependencies, systems were built over many, many years, decoupling many of the applications, right? So migration comes in, and people may not be able to assess the infrastructure, end to end. They may not even know what applications talking to what servers at one point of time, right? So these are the challenges, right? And security becomes a large issue, right? Because when you grow, you need to make sure that your environment is safe and secure, right? Be it on premises or off premises, be it in the cloud, right? So security is one of the major concerns, right? And there could be compliance reason that the data should be there in a particular country or a region, right? Because of various country-driven or regional-driven policies and compliances. Management is another challenge. Service levels would be another. Cost is another factor, because you have all these servers sitting over in a data center, probably underutilized, consuming all the power, cooling, everything, right? So you may probably want to reduce the cost and optimize all the resources what you have. These kind of challenges comes into play when you think of migration, right? Now, how do you think about your migration strategy, right? It's just not that, moving the servers from one to another, but because it needs to match with the organization goals, right? Really what your leadership thinking about how your organization IT strategy would be, right? And what would be the timeframes, right? How long you can, there could be downtimes, there could be servers not being available, right, for their day-to-day business functions, right? How do we, approach this tailor-made migration approaches, right? So that's one of the part of the migration strategy, right? Example scenarios, right? Like reducing the data center size. If you think that if you want to do it, do we have examples available from the similar industry, how they're doing the modernization of the applications, right? Cost would be another, how much we need to spend, what would be the operational expenses associated with it, right? These kind of factors will be, kind of gets into our migration. So, when you're defining your migration strategy. Now, there are many other reasons. I'm not going to be refactoring of the application, replatforming it, or rehosting it, right? Retaining, decommissioning the servers. All these things will come into, or maybe retiring some of the applications. What do you have, right? All these things will be part and parcel of the migration strategy when you define one strategy for it. Now, let's understand how do we come across this migration strategy, right? It starts with discovery, right? Because you need to understand that, what my environment looks like, be, all kind of servers, software, applications, running in your environment, your network equipments, applications, dependencies, tools. It could be your own company own tools, third-party tools, all sort of things we need to identify it, right? And it could be your stakeholders who is consuming these servers, right? So these factors will come into a way, when you do the discovery, right? Any restrictions, any dependencies, licensing, versioning issues, compatibility issues, right? All sort of things, and then you may have your syslog servers would be running there, or your SNMP protocol running in your environment. All those kind of parameters, maybe different vendor specific factors would be there, which we need to discover, right? And from a VMware perspective, so there are a couple of tools we can think of. One is a vRealize log insight, which gives you more of dependencies, analyzing the logs from various VMware environments. You can use RV tools, which is again a popular utility used in VMware environments for gathering all the virtual machines information, host, storage, other components, right? And these are the things which falls into discovery, right? And when you have all this information available, there you start with your assessment and analysis, right? Assessment is nothing but you kind of, from all these data, what you have, kind of evaluating it, making sure that what goes with what, right? You kind of make your strategies around it. You kind of make a plan, stakeholder mapping, application owners, kind of put together everything into a plan, or maybe, in fact, not a plan. In fact, these are the things which fits into the plan, which is the next phase, which we will talk about, right? Any risk, potential risk, what would be our risk mitigation options available, any vulnerabilities which we need to address it, all sort of analysis we will look at it, including cost of ownership, and these kind of things will get into the migration plan. So now the planning phase, right? So you kind of plan your migrations, you kind of design your next data center, what you have, which is after the assessment phase, right? So I think this planning and design itself understood what we need to do in that, more of creating your project plan, your migration plan, your run books, your execution strategy, you name it, right? So, target infrastructure design, how do we do a greenfield, or is it kind of a brownfield deployment, what we're going to do, things like that, right? So all those sort of things you will design, who will be the resources allocated with it, including the personnel who are going to working on it, your budget requirements, all those things comes into your documentation, especially, right? These things will come into planning and design phase. And then finally comes in the implementation and execution phase, where you kind of get into the real hands-on work, where people will be following the best practices, your checklist, you kind of doing the execution, and then kind of doing the, cutover of the applications or servers, what you have migrated, and then finally getting into the validation and testing phase, where you will check all the functional aspect of the application, which is after the migration is working or not, be it your application performance testing, security testing, and all sort of things what you can think of, user acceptance testing once the migration is being done, right? You may even think about your disaster recovery factors at this point of time. Is it working? You want to do a DR testing before it goes cut into a production, right? Now, you might be really kind of lost. This is not going to be easy. And how do we go about doing it, right? There comes, I want to introduce Zenfra, which is kind of an innovative solution from virtual tech gurus, kind of making your life easier by bringing simplicity and a very good solution for your digital success, right? Let's understand a little bit deeper into how Zenfra can help you in this journey, right? Because at the end of the day, you definitely need to have a tool available which you can probably use it for your data-driven analytics, your planning phase, your discovery phase, your migration strategies. And this is a one-stop stuff for you to look at from all these phases, what I discussed about it, including your project management, right? So I just want to give you a snippet of how it does it work with what we have today. So you will see on the left side what kind of supported devices currently at the moment, and we have 3 different ways of doing it through APIs, through a Zen collector, which has been deployed in the customer environment, or you could define your source, right? Customer may have source available there, which you can connect it, right? It's kind of massaged, validated, and gives you more insightful information to you through various workflow, we call it, right? Data ingestion workflow. I'll not go deeper into it because we will have a poll coming in. We will have a few questions about it. And then if you're interested, we would be happy to get into more details with you. Probably discussing more into Zenfra and capabilities, demonstration if really required, all those factors, but those exciting things are coming up, right? So, but this is how typically the workflow goes. I'll not spend too much time here, but we will be happy to address any of the questions during the Q&A session, what we have. And then what happens? Now, all these things are being collected on the first screen. What you see on the left side, we collect all of these information. There you get all these graphs for you because picture talks 1,000 words, right? All this information, what is available, you can see number of servers available. You have your OS versions. You get pretty much all the information in a single pane of glass to take your strategy, you take your decision to the next level. Yeah. And there's another snippet, right? All kind of servers, what is available. If you look at it, some of the aspects here, like capacity based on each data center. If you have multiple data centers, you can talk about what's the capacity there, how many hosts are running there. You name it. It's kind of giving you a complete outlook of your data center across the world. What do you have, right? That's where the beauty of Zenfra comes into play, becomes your buddy for migration, right? And then this is an icing on the cake, right? Most of the complexity associated with the migration is about everybody knows this many servers. If you look at typical traditional IT person, right? They know that, okay, I have 100 servers. I need to make sure it's available, it's running, right? He doesn't really need to know all these applications that depend on many other servers, right? There comes the value proposition of Zenfra comes and gives you that, really, really holistic view of your visualization of all the application, what you have running. If you see on the first diagram here on the left top, right, that's the whole, topology of your infrastructure or data center. Then if you see on the right side, the orange one, so you name one server, what are the different applications talking to that server, right? Then if you see on the blue dot at the center, it talks about an application level. What are the number of servers, which is kind of talking to this application. Isn't it really cool, right? It makes your life very, very easy when it comes to managing your data center journey. And it doesn't stop there because it has got that AI-driven capability. There comes our policy engine. This is an AI-driven, data-driven capability, what we have within the Zenfra, where you define all your policies. And Zenfra itself will suggest to you what could be your move groups, how many servers needs to be bundled together. That makes the real help when you do the migration, because that's something you cannot really do this in Excel file. You have all the logs available. It kinds of get all the assessment done by itself, gives you that view about all the application, how it is dependent with each other. Finally, you can do all those customization the way you wanted. All these menu options are configurable. You can have your own customized dashboards. Depends on the project by project, by division, function by function. You have all those capabilities that Zenfra gives you to make your life easier for migration, right? All right. That comes, now let's take, with all these learning what we have, how do we move vSphere to VCF, right? So we talked about vSphere, talked about vSAN, we talked about NSX, and all these different components. How does it come up when you, kind of bring up that VCF environment? How Zenfra plays a role for making your easy job when it comes to different stages of your migration, be it discovery, analysis, planning, your design phase, your execution phase, all of that, right? In a nutshell for you. And now with all these learning what we have, again, this is a 30,000 view, what you can think of, not really into the hands-on part of the things I'm discussing about it, but just gives you perspective about how complex it is, how virtual tech gurus or Zenfra as an AI-driven platform can help you in this journey, taking from vSphere to vSAN, right? And now look at it, right? And if you look at it in today's world, data centers just don't live only in your physical environment, what you have in your office, right? It could be in the public cloud, it could be in your edge. There's a lot of popularity about edge computing, right? So, and VCF address all of these for you, be it your public cloud, VMC on AWS, your own data center, which is physically available, and your edge, right? Because you may have a remote office, branch office, all sort of things. VCF address and caters to all different kinds of needs with the capability of software-defined data center. So you can sit in one room in front of a computer, you can completely take the control of the entire full stack of your data center through VCF, run that, right? Okay, so now where do we start, right? So you have an existing vSphere environment. I probably will take another 5 more minutes and we'll open up for 15 minutes for Q&A. Just want to give you a perspective how many more slides are there in front of you. Just about 5 more slides of 5 minutes maximum. And then we would love to hear from your questions and happy to answer those questions. And more discussions around if you have more interest in Zenfra as a tool, how it can help, we can definitely walk you through that, right? And if you look at from a migration type, it's just not about one way of doing migration, right? So you have live migration, you have warm migrations, you have cold migration. So everything has its own pros and cons, which is pretty much self-explanatory on the screen. The beauty of the live migration is that you don't have a downtime, right? So you kind of stretching your L2 IP network between your on-premises environment to public cloud. There you go, right? You can migrate the servers from one location to another without even users having an experience of downtime. It's a seamless process, right? If you look at from a warm migration perspective, is one of the most flexible way, but requires downtime from a cutoff perspective. So when you have all the things that have been done, till then user will not experience anything. But the moment we need to cut off from the old server to the new server, that fraction of time where we need to declare your downtime and define your change windows and other things, that's where you move, right? Cold migration is nothing but extended time, as it says cold, right? Users will be impacted, the servers will be shut down, right? And then it kind of moving lift and shift or something of that sort of an idea what we are talking. Changing. It also changed the enabling of you can change your IPs, everything, right? Your new IPs, and then whatever you want to build around it, you can build with cold migration, right? Now there are 2 components I want to quickly introduce. How do we do? So see, we learned about Zenfra. We learned about different stages of migration. But what is the real tool comes into play when you would really want to migrate, right? Who does the work for you to migrate? That's VMware HCX, right? So that's a hybrid cloud extension product which is available from VMware, where you can use it for migrating your workload, right? So what is VMware HCX, right? So it abstracts on-premises and cloud infrastructure resources and present them to applications as one continuous hybrid cloud. It gives you all those capabilities about high performance, security, optimized multi-site interconnects, right? And the beauty of it gives you seamless application mobility and disaster recovery across multiple on-premises vSphere platform and VMware public cloud, right? And if you, in a simple way, if I want to talk about the architecture, it's kind of process begins with 2 sides, a source and target, right? That's how it goes. As you see on the screen, you have a legacy vSphere environment and you have a VMware Cloud Foundation workload domain. It could be workload domain or be a consolidated domain. When you have a smaller environment, you can put all your management layer as well as your servers into one single domain. That's what we call as consolidated domain. But from a standard perspective, you have your management domain separate and your workload domain is VI workload domain is separate. All right, so I probably will not go through about it. How do we do it? But that's something probably a deeper conversation if you're interested to know more about the capability, what Virtual Tech Gurus and Zenfra brings into the table. We can definitely walk you through, right? And also can help you to multi-cloud, multi-site connectivity. If you have a server, a data center, you have another data in another country, you have various kind of public cloud available, you have a VCF environment available, you name it, HCX can help you to kind of migrate all the applications or servers end to end. Yeah. All right, from a VMware perspective, we talked about it, all sort of different types of migrations, right? Warm migration, cold migration. So if I talk about from an HCX perspective, HCX vMotion, right? It leverages VMware vMotion protocol to move a live VM to a target, right? It's kind of a live migration. Bulk migration, HCX migration uses a host-based replication protocol to copy disk from one VM to another, right? And another one, cold migration, kind of third migration option, which we discussed earlier from an HCX point of view. You can shut down the VM and then you can take it to the other environment what you have. Okay, one more thing I will talk about. There is another one which is many of the customer I see using is called replication assisted vMotion. This is a continuous journey that everything what you have in the source sites gets replicated over a period of time. Depends on the size of the server what you have, and then kinds of moves into the new site, and then it switches the replication to vMotion and moves the active state of the VM. And there is something called OS assisted migrations as well. Kind of migrate the application VM that are not running in a vSphere based environment. You can bring them to vSphere based environment, so which are not currently on a vSphere environment. So there are many ways we can do this migration. And then this is another way of doing migration, which is a replication with SRM, Site Recovery Manager. It's more of a hypervisor based asynchronous replication solution for VM. It was earlier kind of designed for data protection, disaster recovery, but can be used as a low cost, easy to use vSphere migration tool from a business continuity perspective. You can leverage this, right? So that's as promised. Kind of last slide what I have. I really want to thank you for joining the webinar today in terms of high level overview of migration strategy from a VMware vSphere to VMware Cloud Foundation. And I just wanted to give it back to Katrina. Take it forward from here.
Sure thing. Thanks, Vipin. So I think probably now we can open it up for Q&A. We really want to understand kind of where you are in this process of your migration between vSphere and VMware Cloud Foundation. We want to know how much more in depth you'd like to see in the future. Or even if you're in the planning state or just trying to learn, that helps us provide better content to you. Our end goal for Zenfra and Virtual Tech Gurus is to continue to have monthly or even 2 times a week, different webinars on different topics within the product base so that we provide you good information for where you are in your transformative journey, whether that's a migration or something with financial operations. But we really want to hear from you on that topic. So we'll open it up for Q&A now. Feel free to raise your hand or pop something into chat.
No, I'm good. I mean, I really wanted to kind of have the time given for the people to do the Q&A if that's what we can look for.
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to pop something in chat. We're going to put out this last poll. I think, Fred, if you want to go ahead and drop that. It's a quick 4 questions. Again, it's really to find out where you are in your journey. We can certainly share these results openly with you, or we can follow up with you individually. We'd like to know which works better for you and what's the best way for us to contact you if you want some future knowledge.
And if anybody has got any questions, you can put those questions in the chat window as well. Maybe we can get back to you also if you think that, and give those answers via email as well. We can put the questions on the chat as well. We're happy to do that.
We have a good 8 minutes. I don't know if anyone has a hard stop, but we are definitely going to stick around for the duration. And even a few of us can stay after if that's needed. All right, so it looks like we have a good amount of answers just to speak to maybe half of the audience here that's been able to get the poll answered. So it does seem like you're getting a better understanding of the VMware vSphere to VCF migration. I think maybe what we might consider doing, and this may be into April, is taking this a little bit step further, like a little deeper dive into specific topics. I think it would be really helpful if you could let us know where you are in that process, or maybe which points you're more interested in pursuing further, so that we can kind of create that content accordingly and giving plenty of notice. This week for us is spring break. I know Vipin is going on spring break next week with his family, and we want to have plenty of time to get you some substantial content that we can present. So feel free to share with us. You can message us independently if you want, or we can take the information here. But just obviously, it looks like there is some interest in pursuing this a little bit further. So let us know how we can be of help to you. As we dive a little bit deeper, we can also share a little bit more about the Zenfer product and maybe how that might help you in the migration piece, and then also migration services. I know we had Skip join, Skip Tamke. I don't know if you want to come off mute. You're welcome to. He is our delivery manager. So he definitely has a very rich history in migrations. So he's here too. We can all take questions for you if those are openly asked. We have you, Skip.
Okay, cool. So I think one of the things that we'd also like to bring out is that we do have a series of other webinars that are coming up that goes into the economics of on-prem versus cloud versus hybrid. And one of the great things about the way Zenfer works is that we can take things from the very beginning of determining, what the break-even analysis looks like, to helping to choose where to go and how to get there, and then to provide a full roadmap, as Vipin spoke about in this presentation.
Yeah, so I think what we can do too, and let me just see if I've got it available. We can send this out to you if you're interested. We have a few more events coming up. I can pull what I have for topics, and if you're interested, we can definitely share this with you as well. It will not be very specific to VMware. It will be more specific to either the financial operations piece or break-even point, as Skip mentioned, and then also some cyber resiliency I think we've got coming up. But into April, we can definitely go a little bit further into the VMware vSphere to VCF migration. Okay, we're gonna let Sanjay in. Okay, we got a question here in chat if anyone wants to take that. Beyond the technical aspects, can you elaborate on the potential business disruptions that might occur during a vSphere VMware migration, and how can they be mitigated? This pushes the conversion beyond technical steps to consider real-world business implications. Thank you for your question.
Katrina, I'm not able to see the question on the chat. If you can, one more time.
Yep, let me read it. Let me read it out loud, and I can put it in the chat as well. It says, beyond the technical aspects, can you elaborate on the potential business disruptions that might occur during a vSphere to VMware migration, and how can they be mitigated? This pushes the conversation beyond technical steps to consider real-world business implications. And really, to speak to this a little bit further, I think the next session that we have on financial operations, or even talking about on-prem to cloud shift, you probably are going to get a little bit more information on that and future topics coming this month. So we'll be sure to share that list and calendar with you all with those kind of detailed agendas, if that's helpful. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to this right now, Skip or Vipin, but I can definitely share the future webinars that we have on the calendar for this month, because I think some of that will speak to those topics.
Hey, thank you, Katrina, for that. I think from a real world implication perspective, that's where, vSphere to VCF migration really, kind of solves that problem, because you have everything built into a place where, seamless migration. So you can choose your methodology. You can strategize the way you want to do it, right? From a real world perspective, if you look at it, if you're approaching a cold migration, definitely there would be an impact, right? Because you should have a mitigation plan about how do you kind of cater to your end customers or the users to have that experience. Maybe you do it on a weekend or off business hours or sort of a thing. But if you look at from a replication assisted vMotion, or if you look at from a live migration using HCX, right? There you really don't have a challenge because it's seamless when it comes to, you don't really see that as from a user perspective, right? You really don't see that, oh, this is a migration is happening, because it's through the vSphere or vMotion capability, right? User will have a seamless experience. That's the beauty of it, right? But if you look in many other approaches, of course, you can have different approaches, but it depends on the approach, what you take it, and how much of downtime a customer can have it in terms of this migration, right? And when it comes to some of the other real world problems you can think of, if you don't have a properly defined discovery, analysis, planning, migration, execution in place without a detailed project plan, things can break because there could be things which somebody can oversee and then kind of, miss it, right? Maybe some of the application dependency, maybe some of the server configurations, right? Which requires in one platform, the application would be running in a predefined preset configurations of a server, and you kind of move into a target and that target doesn't support the application what needs to run. So those kind of analysis is very, very important to solve that problems what probably anybody can think of from a real world perspective. Otherwise, VMware got your back, right? So it's kind of, and as a tool, we have Zenfra working for you to make sure that you don't really face into the problems because you will be more informed already in place while you're defining your strategy and execution plan. I hope that answers.
From a planning standpoint, just out of curiosity, like if obviously we're looking at, the resources that each organization would have in place and what type of migration they would institute. But if we're looking at just like the discovery and assessment piece, maybe we're using Zenfra for that process or our services. What can an organization, when they're looking forward to taking like initial steps, like what kind of time frame would we be looking at, by organization as far as the planning phase goes between discovery, assessment, and then really creating that strategy and plan of action moving forward for the migration? Is that something that you could answer without all those variables in place? I mean, even just a range of time to understand?
If I can jump in on that, typically 33 to 50% of every successful project is in discovery, analysis, and planning. And that it also includes pilot migrations and development of runbooks and things like that. So you really need to budget a third to half of the total project budget for the upfront work. That way you don't have downstream business impact because you've understood all the variables that are necessary.
Arun Kumar, I don't know if that helps answer your question a little bit more thoroughly. I mean, I think your situation might be unique and everyone's is probably unique depending on where they are in the process, but case by case, just maybe given a range of what you would be looking at on the front end, that might be a little bit more helpful. And then certainly maybe looking at the fiscal aspects of that once that third of the labor is complete, kind of understanding, once that budget is spent, what the variables are that follow. We really don't have a whole lot of questions. I'll leave this open here in this chat. We are at the top of the hour. I want to make sure we're respectful to everyone's time. We've gone over just a little bit and without questions. I don't know how much longer we'll stick around, but if you do have any, feel free to pop those in chat. Again, we can provide our contact information as well in the chat if you want to reach out independently. Let us know what you want to see moving forward. We got a really good picture for the polls. So thank you for taking the time to complete those and staying with us through the duration. If there's no more questions at this moment, I guess we can go ahead and conclude today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I guess we're done. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll send you some calendar invites for future seminars in case you want to attend. And we'll take questions at sales@virtualtechgurus.com. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good one, everyone.